Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate. This is your presenter, Dr. Mamdouh Mohamed, presenting to you a new episode, still about the same theme that we have begun long ago, which talks about our children at schools. The most valuable thing for us, our children. Today's topic talks about the effectiveness of textbooks versus the effectiveness of software and internet connections and internet programs. Before I begin my advice to you, I would like you to focus on the screen, get my address, my email address, and get the website that you can get more information from, so that you would have continuous contact with me to get more benefit and to enrich your experience. And here ask the teachers as well as the parents and as well as the students, because we said that the educational process is a partnership between parents and teachers and the leaders of the school and the owners of the school and the students as well. My topic will be about brief comparison between textbooks and their effectiveness and the software and internet computer program. These are some of the aspects that I will do my best to cover in this episode, and I will elaborate on each one of them. These are 7 aspects, and I want you to focus on them, but I'll begin one at a time. This is the aspect of comparison, then the series of books and their qualities, and the software. Let's begin with the first one, which is the cost. Here, let me assume, for the sake of argument, that we have the two sources of material, the two instructional material cost us the same thing. Let's assume that it costs 3 million, for example, reals, or $1 million, and the other one is the same cost. There is no difference, 3 million or 1 million. So it's almost, the cost is the same. However, as we will see, that the results are different. I'm not talking about a real cost now, but this is just pure assumption to say that, to begin with, that we begin from the same point, even if the cost is the same. However, when we go to the cost per copy, the first one that we talked about was the cost of preparation, initial cost for the production. When we go to the cost per copy, we will find that the cost per copy for books, for example, 6 or 7 books, it may reach $99. This is an assumption. But if this is the amount of money that we pay for the series of books that we learn, we know that some books have this series of 6, 7, some of them are 8, some of them more or less, but this, let's assume that if it costs us per copy $99, the cost for a software is $1. And you can see this huge gap in the cost of the books and in the cost of software. And this may make us think and rethink of the validity and the importance and the effectiveness of using textbooks now. Not only that, just imagine that if you buy these textbooks from a bookstore, $99, you need to take them to South Africa or to India or to Indonesia or to Canada or somewhere in the world. That's just the cost of weight. You can add this, for example, 10 or 20 or extra or less dollars to this amount of money, whereas if you take one software, it wouldn't cost you anything if you take it with you, if you carry it. Even if it's sent by mail to you, the cost will double, and it becomes very expensive. And it raises a question, and I think that the teachers and the investors and the government and the curriculum developer should think in these terms. In other words, you can imagine we can produce, if after having the initial cost, we can produce 99 or 100 software at the same price that we are producing series of books that consist of 6 or 7 textbooks. In other words, we are going to save huge amount of money for our governments or for our schools if we produce high quality teaching software. I hope this issue would change the direction where we think, where we are heading. Are we heading the right directions or are we hitting the wrong directions? It's time to rethink of things that had been used for us for granted, and now it's no longer valid. We need to rethink of that. The other element is the content. When you talk about the content of textbooks, usually you are talking about silent content or silent texts that does not speak, that doesn't have any audio, that doesn't have any video, just silent one, and therefore it requires perhaps a teacher, as we are going to explain later on. Silent texts in themselves are really boring. They need some liveness in it. They need to be active and live. They need human voice. They need a teacher. That's why most of the textbooks nowadays come with an addition of an audio tape or a CD or any other things that try to make it live. However, this is the nature of the textbooks, just written script in them. When you compare them with the software, which becomes nowadays are very vivid and very attractive. So they just make the students more interested in the content and more interested in learning more and more. And not only that, it makes a good balance in the skills, as I will explain later. When you have a software that has sound and that has video, so it enriches the skill of listening, it enriches the skill of speaking in some of the softwares, it enriches the skill of reading, even sometimes it enriches, in most cases, the skill of writing. So there's a balance between the skills in the software, whereas when you look at the textbooks, usually the main focus is the reading. So the reading skill increases at the expense of other skills because of the nature of the textbooks. Now, let's imagine this difference as teachers or as students. When we think that the focus of the textbook is on deciphering the written text or understanding long texts, just related to one skill, reading, and this will weaken the other skills. And as we know that any language in the world has 4 skills. The listening skill, which is as important as speaking skill, which is as important as reading skill, which is as important as writing skills. So a software would enrich the teaching process by trying to cover or to make a good balance between all these skills, something that's really missing in the silent text or in the series of books. And accordingly, there is another difference that will appear here between the software and the series of books here. If the series of books, we call them silent texts, that means to be a little bit vivid, they require a teacher. And here is another point. The teacher costs money. The teacher, whether it's a private teacher, tutor, or a teacher in school, costs money. And this is not the case with the software, where you can use it by yourself, because if it is well prepared, it will do the job of the teacher. Wow. So in a software, we are saving a teacher because all the work of the teacher, as we will see now, the model reading, the feedback, the tracking, all these things that are done by the teacher in the classroom are or can be done by a software. That's why we call it self-instructional. You can learn from it by yourself at the comfort of your living room, or at the comfort of your desk, or at the comfort even of your bed. You can learn, and you can have a teacher with you in the software. You can have some feedback from the teacher, which is represented in the software. So now you can see the advantages of having a software as a learning tool when you learn Arabic and you learn other languages. And I hope we pay attention to this. And I hope the investors and the curriculum developer would pay attention to this quality. Let's take a break and come back. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Mamdouh Mohamed, your presenter. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back to our program. And the focus was a brief comparison between textbooks and software in relation to teaching, for example, Arabic, or teaching English as a second language or foreign language, or even as a native language. And we were trying to make some points of comparison here to see how effective software are in the learning and in the teaching of a language. I talked about 4 aspects, and now I'm moving to another aspect which is very important as well, because it relates to the cost of production. This is if you want to make changes in old versions. Now, it's as simple as this. We are humans, and we make errors. And there is not a single book that, unless you find in it some errors and some typos in it. And if you want to improve the quality and to review and to make some changes in a textbook or a series of textbooks, the price is very costly. You need to make the changes, and after you make the changes, you need to reproduce the whole thing again, so that the new version that reaches the students or the learners would have less or no errors or no mistakes. You can imagine how costly this process is in textbooks, because when you make these errors, you need to reprint the whole thing again. And you can see the cost, if you remember, in number 2, item number 2, the cost per copy. When you reproduce it, the cost will be again $99 approximately per series of copies or series of books. When you compare this with changes in a software, first of all, the process of changes are very easy. They less time consuming, they don't consume a lot of time. And when you reproduce the version on a new CD, you know that the first CD cost $1. So even if the other one would cost the same, it is still $1. When you compare it with $99, you can see the huge gap between the two of them, which is an invitation for us to really think of the effectiveness of the textbooks nowadays at the expense of when we compare it, or in comparison with the cost of production of a software. And also, not only that, it is easier, much easier to make changes on it. And immediately you would find the product appearing on the internet, on a website. It just takes few seconds or few minutes or maximum few hours to see the changes appearing in the new version or in the program on the computer. If it is web-based, you will see it immediately. You see the changes immediately in front of you. It's a big big thing. It's a very important factor in making the feedback and changing, because continuous changing, because as we said that we are human beings, we err, we make mistakes, and we all the time need to modify what we have. Even if we don't make mistakes, but still we find a new suggestion or a new input from here or there, we can easily insert them and integrate them and see the results appearing, and we see the new changes appearing immediately or at a very low cost in the case of software, and a very high cost in the textbooks. Something again would make us rethink of the importance and the validity and the effectiveness of using textbooks or on heavy use of textbooks nowadays. Another point of comparison is that the freedom of choice. When we study, when we read, when we learn from a textbook, usually the choice is very limited because you go linear. You finish this lesson, or you finish this exercise, you move to the second exercise, you finish this text, you go to another text, you finish this passage, or you finish this activity, and you move the following. It's linear. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because this is how the book is designed. Whereas in the computer, when you use the software, it's not necessary to go through a linear line. In other words, when you, for example, you find the result of your work is shown there, and you get 100% out of 100%, and you are qualified to shift from the following exercises to totally a new higher level of exercise, or a more advanced lesson, or a more advanced activity, you will see the difference. So it is branching in the software. It is branching where you have the freedom of a choice to move from this direction to this to that direction based on your capacity. And you would find the feedback from the software itself. It tells you now you can move here, or you can move there, or you can jump into this following lesson, or this advice or that advice. This something is not available in textbooks. Yes, you have the freedom to skip all lessons and go there, but you don't know whether you are ready and qualified to go to lesson number 10 or lesson number 20. But in the case of software, it tells you that because of the grading system and evaluation system that's available in the software, it can advise you to move or to jump to lesson number 5 or to lesson number 20, or it depends on you. It addresses every student at his own pace, unlike the case of books that require a teacher, not only a teacher, but it requires an excellent or an outstanding teacher who needs to give you this valuable feedback, which is not the case in textbooks. You still need a teacher with the textbooks to get this feature that's available for free in a software. Let's move to another point of comparison or aspect of comparison to show you the difference of quality between series of books and software. Let's talk about the feedback. I would definitely say that some books may give you feedback by having the corrections at the end of the chapter or the end of the book. It is true that some books have these features, but when you compare the quality of the feedback that is used in the textbook and the quality of the feedback that's used in the software, it's really amazing. In the software, you get, first of all, the immediate feedback. Once you make the mistake or the error, you would get a feedback from the software or from the programming of the software. And not only that it is immediate and relevant, but also it is very detailed, and it gives you direction. It tells you perhaps you need to go to exercise number so and so in this slide or in that place in the software to get more reinforcement in order to be able to understand it. Also, it gives you explanation of the error or the mistake that you made, so it's immediate and comprehensive feedback at a very low cost. Not only that, all the time you can give it 1 trial, 2 trials, 3 trials. In a book or in a textbook, it can give you the right answer. But here, if I made 2 or 3 mistakes, it will give me 2 or 3 feedback and gives me the analysis of this feedback. It's not just giving feedback that is right or wrong, but it tells you, yes, you made a mistake because of this and this and this and this. Something that may be very difficult or would enlarge the size of a textbook if it is available there. It's a very important teacher, especially if you bear in mind that you can learn from the book or from the software by yourself. So if you're learning by yourself, you need a teacher, you need someone to give you feedback, and this is given to you for very low cost in the issue of software. I'm quite sure by now the parents, the teachers, the curriculum developers, the students themselves can see the value of the software in comparison with textbooks. And I'm quite sure, I don't want to say that it's too late to begin, but I would say it's really the time to think of changing our direction, the way we think, in order to give the attention that producing software requires. Again, feel free to contact me to get more information from my email, mamdouh2000@hotmail.com. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.